think we're live and rocking and rolling. So today I've got Lee Becker here out of Arlington, Virginia / DC by means of originally starting his business in Connecticut, but we'll get into that. So Lee, I appreciate your time, man, and just wanted to chat a little bit about your journey. Maybe first start with what you were doing prior to franchise ownership. Then from there, kind of the discovery process and evaluation process of us and potentially other businesses, and then kind of roll into what's going on now with your operation. So maybe that'll be your first cue, buddy. And question is, tell me a little bit about yourself prior to Footprints Floors.
Yeah, so I began my career in the alcohol industry, and I worked in that world for about 13 years. I started in beer with Anheuser-Busch, and then I went over to some non-alcohol with some smaller breweries, and then onto the spirit side, working in craft sales and distribution. So I kind of used to say I worked on supplier and wholesaler, sales, marketing, major brand, small brand in different parts of the country, and kind of had a big rounded career there. And then COVID hit, and for many of us, we had a lot of free time to rethink what we wanted to do with our life. And I decided it was time for me to do my own thing, but I also didn't want to reinvent the wheel. So actually, it first came across a beer store that was a franchise, and that's how I went, oh, this is a franchise. Let me research into this, and then found a franchise consultant through some networking, and we looked at a few different brands that all kind of focused whether around alcohol or around retail or bar or brewery or that kind of thing. And the numbers never made sense. They were illogical. I was the margins weren't there. There was a huge startup costs, and my franchise consultant kept saying, "Hey, this Footprints Floors brand is blowing up," and I kept saying, "That's boring. I don't want to hear about that. I don't want to do floors. I don't want to do construction." And then finally, I got frustrated with one of the businesses we were evaluating, and I just said to my franchise guy, "All right, fine, send me the flooring stuff." And I read it. I read the FDD. It was probably not all of it, but the important parts. And it was probably my fourth or fifth time. So I knew what I was looking for and started to say, okay, this makes sense. This is logical. And then eventually I met you, and then eventually started having calls with different franchisees, and eventually met the corporate team. And everywhere along the line, it made sense. The business made sense. The business was logical. It didn't have crazy high, $1 million startup costs and multiple units required and all these other big things. It was hey, you operate this business out of your home or your truck, and we coach you through it, and we go from there. So that kind of began the journey. And I'd moved out of New York City during COVID, and then was moving back to the area and realized I didn't want to start a business in New York City. So I picked Southern Connecticut, Stamford, Connecticut, sort of less than an hour outside of the city. And that's where the journey began.
So, I got my opinions and thoughts in spending so much time with you, not only through the discovery process, but also as pure franchise owners and becoming friends and stuff. But, when your consultant said to you, look at Footprints, I know your immediate reaction, but what were his points related to why you should look at us? Do you remember? Was it a correlation of your networking, marketing, sales background? Was it simplicity, or you go for it?
I think some of it was, the sales side of it, and knowing that I had done sales. This is a different kind of sales, but I had done sales, but also the simplicity of it. Again, I thought it would be great. I want to open a beer store, a beer bar, but the overhead for these physical locations is crazy, and I'm not made of money. I was lucky enough to have a nest egg to use to invest in this business, but that nest egg is a lot smaller than what it takes to open a bar.
Sure.
And I think the simplicity, and then also just the nature of kind of a home service based business, it's very personal. It's very relationship building. And again, it's that I've learned that what I love is to interact with people and almost teach them. Part of my favorite thing I found out about the alcohol business was educating people on the fun things about alcohol. And now it's educating people on the fun things about floors and wood and, you know, that kind of stuff. So I think it just spoke to my personality.
Yeah, it's funny you say the educational side of it. I find that whether it's like successfully closing a job, or if you look back at problem solving through a problematic customer, like most of it is about education, whether that's like, gosh, we failed to educate them and that's why they got upset, or they were upset because they were ignorant, rightfully so. They're not the flooring person. And then we have to take a moment and go, wait, whoa, I got to tell you, like, we're right on track. It's okay. It feels like the wheels fell off. But yeah, a lot of what we do, it's selling, of course, but it's like nonstop education. And it's fun though. It's like very logical and practical and like rational education when a homeowner's like emotional, right?
Yeah. And even something as silly as yesterday, I get a message from my customer service rep. One of my favorite things about the franchise is, and she says, hey, this guy, you know, is looking to get his floor done, but he wants to talk to you about the payment schedule. Will you talk to him, you know, before you schedule an estimate? And I'm open to that. I said, sure. And I talk and he goes, yeah, I work in the contracting business as well. And I'm against paying a 50% deposit for a business, for a job that's 80% service based. And so like, I'd cover your goods, but I don't think paying a 50% deposit is reasonable. And I said, all right, well, what state do you live in? He goes, well, I'm in Maryland. And I go, well, guess what? The state law in Maryland says I can only collect a 33% deposit. So
Oh, nice.
Nothing to worry about. And he goes, oh, really? And I go, yeah, that's the state law. So the other contractors that are trying to service your home in Maryland that are telling you they're going to collect 50% are breaking the law. And so he kind of went, oh, I didn't know that. Thanks for telling me that. And then we had a continued like I broke through that barrier and then was able to have a conversation about what he actually wanted done in the home and all that stuff. And I didn't change anything that I had to change. I just educated him on the state laws.
Well, and it's such a good point you bring up, because like people think sometimes like, why are we hired as like this in between a crew and a homeowner? Even a guy that's a contractor, it's not his lane of expertise. So he's like, he could build ground ups or concrete or whatever contracting
he's architect,
he does.
something or something. Yeah.
But he recognizes there's a value in like, hey, I want my floors done. I want them done right. I want them done according to, you know, manufacturer and industry codes. And it's like, the crew's capable of it, but are they going to pay attention? No, that's why I hire Lee, right? Lee pays attention to the codes. Lee pays attention to the contractual law in the state. So yeah, it's funny you say educate, and with both parties, right? You're educating about alcohol, you're educating about floors, and both the outcomes. You're like, hey, I promise when we're all done with this, you're going to be hungover a little bit. Like you're going to have to clean your house. You're going to have to like get your
ductwork wallet clean. Or usually in the wallet, both cases, but yeah,
but like you got to put your furniture back in and your pictures back on the wall. So it's kind of like a Saturday hangover after a Friday night out drinking.
Trying to find where you put everything. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So trust me, once that dies, about 3 weeks later, you'll like your floors. But like right when I'm collecting my check, you're like, ouch. Yeah. Trust me, it hurts.
Or the people that are focused on the minute little detail, and you go, look, in 3 weeks, you're not even going to notice it. I promise.
Oh, but it's their house. It's
yeah.
I mean, that's what I find.
Oh, I don't say that to them, but
right.
I said that to my friend this morning.
Yeah, that's the most important thing to remember. Like, even though it's petty or ticky-tacky, it's like, but you're in their house, and if they brought it up, it means something to them. So how do you just like, you know, acknowledge it and then move forward?
Yeah, I say I mean, you get that a lot with those customers, and I say, look, I understand. For me, it's business. For you, it's personal. This is your home, and we're going to do everything we can to respect that. We're also going to follow industry standards and industry guidelines. And if you are standing in your shower and you're with a magnifying glass looking for little, you know, bubbles in the grout, well, the industry says you stand 5 feet away, and if you can't see it, you can't see it. So I'm not going to sit here and you know, kowtow to every tiny little minute detail, but we're going to do things the right way according to the industry. And that's exactly, I think, one of the most important things about Footprints is getting the chance to be certified by the National Wood Flooring Association and the National Tile Contractor Association, and having those resources and those representatives behind us. You know, they're not going to support us blindly, but if we're following what we're supposed to do, we have the support, and we're taught to do what we're supposed to do.
Oh, And as you know, like I hopped on this morning with Scott, related to some bath and tile stuff, and I go, "Hey Scott, I'm curious," and he gave me all the codes, and I'm like, "Sweet." So if not, and there's just a flow chart, and I'm like, "Wait, that took me like 30 seconds to type him a text." He called me, we talked through it, and he goes, "Here's your if, ands, and buts," and I'm like, "Awesome." And I'll probably retain it for a year maybe, and then I'll have to tap back into the pros, the experts that write these manuals, and they're there at 7:30 in the morning when we text them, which is amazing, right? Yeah. So back up a little bit. What do you think through your journey was the catalyst that said, Footprints is the right company for me? Was it conversations with franchise owners? Was it meeting the team? Was it the total package? Just, what was that like?
I think what finally did it was, hey, we're coming out to Denver for Discovery Day and we're meeting the team. And it all kind of seems to go quickly, even though you do a good job of spacing us out and giving us time to digest and all that. But maybe you guys had the feeling that once they come out here, they're basically decided, but I didn't have that feeling. I had the feeling of I need to go and meet these people that I've only really heard of, because I've met franchisees and I met you over, digitally, but I hadn't met Brian Park. I hadn't met Debbie Malconi, and I hadn't met Chris Curtis. But the people that are influential in the franchise, once I got in front of those people, it really did. And it sounds silly, but it felt like a family atmosphere. It felt like people that are genuinely interested in my success. And I guess I had some previous people that in different franchises that didn't make me feel that way, that would dodge my questions or ignore, concerns I had. Whereas Footprints never seemed to run away from that. And also everyone involved in the process, it feels that they genuinely are interested in your success. Yes, because we make them money, but also our success as a business person and as an individual person who's running a business. And I would always joke from, I guess I still do that, like Joel, franchise support, is my emotional support animal. And certainly in the first year or two, when I would call him out of the blue and say, I need you to talk me off the ledge, there were always people there. And, bit by bit, you learn and you adjust. But I really do think that the support system that Footprints has, I did not get the feeling of the other franchises I looked at, business I looked at, was what put me over the edge. I mean, simply put, anyone could figure out how to run a store if I wanted to sell beer. I know a lot about beer. I can put a POS system in, no problem. 95% of the franchisees have no clue about flooring until we're taught about flooring. And yes, after our few weeks of training or a couple of weeks of training, we know a lot. And then you get back to your home market and you go to your first estimate and you go, I have no idea what I'm looking at. Yeah. And then you call someone and you go, I think I learned about this. Can you help me? And that's the training process and the franchise and the support process the whole way through to this day, 4.5 years later, is really one of my favorite things, and the constant level of support that I've needed.
Yeah, I share that same thing. It's like you go through training and you're like, oh my gosh, and they make it look so easy that you go home and then you all of a sudden meet with a customer and go, oh my goodness. And then Joel goes, hey, we've gone through this quote enough, just like click send. Yeah. And then all of a sudden I remember you called Joel and you're like, or Kate or whatever, and you're like, hey, they said yes. And you're like, and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Now I have to do this.
You got this. You got this. Or look, I'm 7 years in, looking to renew my agreement here in a few months, and I'm still calling Scott or texting Scott because I'm like, I don't know. And I think, you could probably agree with this. Like, there's so many things that govern our world and the rules and so forth that it's hard to know them all, but to know the channels and the pathways to get them, and then to be able to tap into either the experts on our side or the industry experts via our Google chat. And it's instantaneous because corporate, pays to have that support for us and provides all that to us. It's like, I don't want to act like I don't need to know, but a lot of times I'm like, I don't know, let's go get the answer. Like, let me send a few messages out there and I'll have an answer.
Oh, my very first estimate, I walk in and they go, yeah, we want to redo this shower. And it had been gutted. And of course you have the studs in the stall shower. And I went to myself, I remember the first thing I thought to myself is, can I screw Beckerboard directly to the studs? And Of course, we do that all the time. But that was my first thing going, because when we learned tile, we just did it on the floor, and there was the backer board. There was no conversation. There was no like,
Right.
you have to put the backer board on the wall somehow.
Yeah.
I was like, do I have to put plywood on the wall and then backer board on top of it?
That's a good point. So talk me through a little bit about training, and I can give my vantage points, but it's like you walk in green, right? Maybe you built a bike jump with your dad or something in the garage, but you walk in green because we weren't construction people. And then talk me through, what did they teach you?
Yeah, I mean, I remember training, and I'm sure it's evolved, and I know that it evolved before me when it got to me, but it was 2 weeks in Denver. Mine was right after convention in Denver. So I really had 3 weeks in Denver because I had the longer old format convention and then right into it. And the first week is spent sort of in the classroom. We've also done online trainings before then, but of course it's all theoretical. So I might be able to tell you what the grit sequence is for a refinish because I've taken the online class, but that doesn't mean I know what the machine looks like or even the sandpaper looks like. So
or even how to hold the thing in a room from walking across. Yeah.
So
Totally.
I mean, we've done, you're supposed to have done, some of the online trainings just to give you an idea, but really the first week was spent learning about the sales side of it as opposed to the production side of it. So I think we had a day of, this is how we sell, and then a day of this is the systems that we use, and this is how you use the different tools, and this is our CRM software, and then this is how you build an estimate, and all these things of the what you do in a customer's home, and really what we do every day. And then the second week was the more hands-on training where you spend a couple days installing hardwood, sanding and finishing hardwood, installing tile, and those things we don't really do on a day-to-day basis, but it's important for us to know what we're doing so that we can watch our crews and know if the crews are doing something that they should or shouldn't be doing. And also so that I can speak to a customer and say, yeah, I'm certified by the National Wood Flooring Association. I'm a certified sales advisor. I'm a certified installer. And I know what I'm doing. I don't do it every day because my crews have 15, 20 years of hands-on experience. And I always tell my customers, I'm going to blend their real world experience with my classroom experience and my education and my ability, my access to, new research and innovations, because we follow the industry and are taught things in this company with what they do on the floor every day. And we put those together, and you're going to get an excellent craftsman with, modern techniques and technology.
Yeah. I always joke, I agree with you considering like we need to know how it goes in so that when we walk in, we know what's going on. But I always joke that they have us do installs and tile so that we realize how hard it is and how much we respect our crews. Right? It's
point.
Like, hey,
how much you don't want to do it yourself.
Yeah. So don't run your crew off because you don't want to lay tile, But no, you're right. They've done it for years. And a lot of what they say is like, oh, that's how my uncle taught me. And so we're like, well, do you know the why behind it? This adhesive doesn't work because the moisture's too high, or they don't know those whys. And so, yeah, our technical side of it, and I think just willingness to just shoot a customer straight and say, yeah, I'm not sure, let me look into that, versus, oh yeah, we do it like this all the time. That doesn't cut it. So we kind of just have to push pause on the crews and go get those answers.
And that's the education part that I was talking about earlier. It's the same thing. I have to be educated so that I can educate the customer and go with it that way.
Yeah. So fast forward maybe a little bit, right? You exit training, you're up and running, right? My experience, I was like, oh my gosh, the phone rang. Oh my gosh, we're out to estimates. And the next thing you know, we're operating. And so kind of walk me through maybe the early phases of operation and then fast forward to what, later on looks like.
Yeah. I mean, I would say one of the biggest shocks is that it does actually work the way Footprints tells us it works. They start when you're in training, they turn on all your accounts, they get your credit card for your leads, and you get home and you have estimates. And then you put out your ad or your Craigslist ad or to find a crew, and the crews call. And then you have the conversation with the crew, and you learn who you're talking to and who's just trying to get a few bucks and who knows what they're talking about. And it actually is correct. It's what Brian and Chris and everyone told us in training is accurate. And you find your crew and you start with the crew, and maybe they weren't the best crew, but now you've started your business and then you find the next crew, and maybe that guy doesn't work out and you find the next one. And that's just kind of how it goes. And then you get into your routine that we're taught to get into, which I'm still following, where the mornings are reserved for production, job starts, job checks, making sure the customer knows you've been there, saying hi to the customer, making sure the crew knows you're, not just available, but also present. And then we switch, we change hats. I always kind of sit in my car and I take one, put the other hat on, and I take off my production hat and I put on my sales hat. And then we go and say, I got to go to the next, I got to sell the next job, and I got to fill the pipeline, and I got to keep my crews that I like working with because they're good. I got to keep them busy. Otherwise they're going to go find somebody else to keep them busy. And so, and that's really the day to day. I mean, I learned quickly that like job start days on Monday mornings are stressful because that's the day where I take what I saw and blend it with what the crew saw. And then even just last week, my crew and I speak Spanish. We're speaking back and forth in Spanish, and the customer goes, "Is everything okay?" And I go, "For sure. We're just doing that blend of this is what I saw. Here's what the work order is. Here's what I showed you." And he said, "Well, I think we should do it this way." And I said, "Well, what about doing it this way?" And then we went back and forth a little bit and we settle on it. And it's not an argument. It's how you get to consensus. And then, you go on to the next day. And then it's funny because by the second and third day, the customer's like, "Hey, you're here?" And I go, "Yeah, just checking in for 10 minutes. And then I go, "All right, everything's good. I'm off. I'll see you later."
Right.
And then in the afternoon it's sales. And sometimes when a customer says, "Well, are you gonna be here?" And I go, "Yep, I always try and check in at least once a day. But just as I came to meet you and was able to, convince you to work with me, I got to go find my next customer." So off and running we go. And there are days when you go to Home Depot 3 times. And as you get more experience, you learn how to plan ahead and go to a Home Depot earlier and have everything ready with you instead of needing something last minute. And then there's the day when the crew calls and goes, "Something's wrong," and you figure it out. But generally, you just keep trucking down that path. And every time I've always built things up in my head. Every time I think we're running into a disaster, it ends up being, it tends to just kind of work out okay. So I started calling things minor emergencies, which is a bit of an oxymoron. But I'll tell my fiance, I'll call her in the middle of the day and I go, "Yeah, I just had a minor emergency. The customer was freaking out, but once I understood what they were talking about, it really wasn't a big deal at all."
Yeah. That's interesting. You call it a minor emergency. I love that because it's not a big deal, but they want you immediately, right? So it's urgent to them. And then you have to go back to the education hat and go, "Oh, wait, I got to back up a minute and express, educate them why this isn't a big deal." Like they're observing something, but yeah, we got that covered. We'll get there, but you can't just brush it off. You have to take a moment to put on those kid gloves. And I find a lot of times that interrupts us in the afternoon when we're doing sales. That production minor emergency calls you, and you're like, "Oh, great." How do you keep your headspace clean? Like for what you laid out is what we do too, right? We do project management in the morning, try to get the customers out the door and off to work. That's the hope. And then in the afternoon, you try to put on, and you're problem solving, right? You're connecting with Scott, getting an answer on tile and backer board and water membrane or whatever. And then all of a sudden, and it's stressful because you don't know the answer. So you're sitting there going, "I got to get these answered." And then all of a sudden it kind of comes together and you got a game plan. And then you go off to do sales estimates, hopefully with a smile, a positive attitude, infectious energy, because I find we get invited in and people are emotionally excited. They're attached. They want to transform their property, but inevitably you get that text, your phone rings or whatever. How do you deal with some of that emotional separation that helps you succeed with your sales and then go back to production hat when you walk out the door? Or do you?
It's not easy. I mean, that's part of, I guess compartmentalizing. I forget the movie. It's a classic movie, but there's like a montage and he wakes up every day and gets in front of the mirror and goes, "It's showtime." And I think that's just kind of how I think of it. But you're right. I mean, it happened yesterday that I'm in a house and my crew is calling me. And usually the first thing I do is just quickly ignore the phone call and text them and say, "I'm in an appointment. I can text. I can't talk to you. If it's an emergency, I'll call you as soon as I get out. And if it's an emergency, let me know." And most of the time it can wait. If it can't wait, I say to the customer, hey, with all due respect, I'm here, I'm focused on you, but just as you would need my attention if I'm doing a job for you,
Yeah.
I got to step out for 5 minutes. I apologize. I hope that's okay. And most people are very understanding about that. And that's just a day in the life when you're managing things that way. And I think most people understand it. And yeah, you have to compartmentalize. But again, I do consciously feel myself put the smile back on and go, okay, we're going to put that away for a couple minutes and let's come back to talk about your project. And it's the same thing. When I first started, I didn't know how to turn my brain off, my phone off, figuratively, if you will. I came from the alcohol business where you work until 10 p.m., 2 a.m., something like that, and you get back to it. And if a bar is running out of booze and you can be the hero to get them something, you do it. Whereas I had to learn that, hey, after 5, unless there's a flood, there might be something going on, but no one's solving it at 5, and nothing that we're doing is really an emergency. You might be unhappy, okay, but there's nothing I can do to fix it at 8 o'clock at night. I will see you at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
With my crew to look at the problem. I think one time I had a customer tell me that the water, they had something, water was dripping. And I said, okay, well, I live an hour from you. So let's start by, hey, under the toilet, there's a valve. Let's turn that off. And they went, okay. And I go, it stopped. It stopped. And I go, yeah. And I go, great. I'll see you tomorrow.
Right.
That's understanding what they're saying, but also being able to say to them, like, I know what's happening. This is under control. And it's scary to tell the customer that. But I think also when you say, hey, there's nothing I can do tonight at 8 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock that we can't do tomorrow. With respect, I'm if someone calls me and then starts to text, I'll say, even if I'll lie, I'm out to dinner with my fiance. I'm out to dinner with family. I'm sorry. And most of the time, people are okay. And if they continue to freak out, I'll get on the phone and teach them to relax.
Yeah, I love that. I'm right there with you. I can't tell you how many times, and it's the truth that I'm like, hey, I'm walking into coach hockey with my kids. Like, I can give you 5 minutes, and then or I'll shoot a text. Like, I'm on the ice. I'll talk to you in the morning. And it's not what they want to hear, but I think just like kids or whatever, it's like you just give them a little bit of time to cool off. They realize it's not the end of the world, and you just move forward. There's no such thing as a flooring emergency. I'm like, if it really is an emergency, you got the wrong guy. Hang up and call 911. I'm the wrong guy.
Hence the minor emergency,
Yeah,
oxymoron. Exactly. It's an emergency that I don't like my stain color. Well, I'm not fixing that at 8 o'clock at night. We'll talk about it tomorrow.
Right. Put a rug over it. Don't look at it. We'll be there tomorrow. Yeah. So you talked about Debbie and Chris and meeting everybody at Discovery Day, but like as that's materialized, what's your relationship like with the corporate people that you lean in on regularly?
I think it's really good. I mean, again, even the people that I don't talk to as regularly, as in, people outside of the franchise support team, where like a Debbie or a Lori Joe, anytime I do reach out and do need to talk to them and do need their help, they're very on top of things. They're, again, everyone's friendly and warm. Relocating my business, which we hinted at earlier, required a lot of back end from them. And I knew, there was a couple times when I said, hey, can we all get on a call so that, the 3 or 4 different managed services people and myself can all be aligned. And they did. It was no problem. It was very much, let's jump on, let's talk through the issues. Let's make sure we have a game plan and make sure I know what I have to do versus what they have to do. And I think everyone is excellent in that way. Taylor on the operations side has become someone that not only do I really enjoy, but respect how sharp he is. And I admit that sometimes I maybe lean on him more than I should, but he seems to be pretty gracious about it. Just with how sharp he is in our systems and our back end and our new system and things like that. And, someone like Joel, sorry, my cats are scratching at the door. Someone like Joel, I legitimately is a friend of mine now, and it was definitely time where I felt like I was abusing him, and I try to be respectful, but that's also what you do with a friend. I don't I don't call him on the weekends, I
Right.
don't bother him, but he is someone that I have has walked the life that I'm walking, that has owned a business, that has owned Footprints floors, and someone that has anything that I've freaked out about, he's probably freaked out about the same. And he's someone that, and Kate, I mean, obviously Kate as well. I just, whatever reason, I don't think Kate was I think when I started was the same week that Joel started with corporate. So we just always kind of got along.
Right. I think Kate came on like a few months after.
Right. And not that I mean, Kate's amazing.
Yeah.
I just have more worked with Joel, but I just think it really does feel like that family atmosphere. And I also love that about the franchisees. Being on the tech committee, I felt like I've gotten pretty close with a group of those folks. And then having relocated into the region with a Brandon McBrier, and Amanda Wilkins, and Sean, these are people, Scott Ogburn, these are people that I kind of already had a good relationship with. Some of it for going to like NWFA trainings, or going to Lancaster, Pennsylvania on a mill tour. And then, getting to see those people, I get excited for things like conventions and trips, because even though I see you or these people once a year, we have a good time when we're together. And people that I talk to all year round who are helpful and support systems. And, I try to answer things on the chat without sounding too like I don't know what I'm talking about. And then, but yeah, you get that. There is a really wonderful sense of camaraderie. And I definitely really appreciate that. And that was even when I was in the Anheuser-Busch world and you're basically working remote, there's a lot of that you miss. And here there's just another level of, I don't see you all the time, but we are living the same lives. We have the same problems, and different guys and girls. You give them a call on a Friday and just chit chat. I mean, my neighbor Tim Buser out here called me last week, and the conversation started with, "Do you have a good guy for glue down vinyl?" And I went, "No, not really. Do you?" And then from there, we just ended up chatting for an hour in the car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so awesome. I for a while I overlooked that I had a connection with everybody, and I assumed like everybody also had a connection with one another. And it was, I had to think about it. I'm like, wait a second, Brian, you speak to everybody that comes through, from the initial phone calls to the approval days to the signing of a franchise agreement. So of course I know everybody and their backstories and so on. And so the first couple of years it was somewhat fragmented. And I think it was because there was these classes that stuck together. But as we've grown and we've created more like, our I always screw up what they're called, but like franchise to success committees. And we get on our Thursday calls, like we're going to be on, I guess we don't have one today, but next week we've got them. And, I'm starting to see more and more where it's like, oh, everybody knows everybody. And one of the things I think about quite often is like, the business model is so sound. The industry we're in is very, stable. It's got longevity. It's not going to be, taken away by AI. And like all these different things are there. And corporate is beyond supportive. So all of that is significantly valuable to me. But if I had to put a value or say what's the most valuable asset we have, I think it's our culture. I think it's you and I and everybody that like genuinely cares about one another, to the point that, like you said, Tim calls you with no fear. You guys talk about not having a glue down guy, and then you spend an hour on the phone. Or I know, you and I were BSing a while back about, hockey and Stanley Cup playoffs. And it's like, if it's not that, we're all talking shit about,
and I called you to ask you a
football
question that had nothing to do with the franchise, sales world. I called to ask you about, business tactics, if you will, and things like that, which are just because I went, Brian knows these things, so let me ask him some questions.
Right. And it's so interesting. And I think like we've done a really good job of continuing to grow that. I was recently working with this gentleman. I think you might have spoken with him, Perez, out in Boise, Idaho. And as he's getting
close, Boise, Idaho, but I don't know if I ended up speaking with him. Yeah.
Yeah. So as he's getting close to the finish line, I had an unexpected trip I had to make. My dad had to go in for surgery. And so I was going up there, and I can't remember why, but I had to cancel an appointment with Perez or whatever. And he found out I was coming. And my dad's like an hour out of Boise. And this guy hasn't even signed up for the franchise, and he offers to take me to my dad's house.
That's so nice.
He comes on to sign with us and stuff. My dad's in Emmett, just like
of course. Yeah.
Northwest, I guess, of Boise. Beautiful area.
I mean, I managed the state for Anheuser-Busch for 3 years, so it's been some years, but I've touched a lot of parts of that state.
Yeah, yeah. So as we continue to kind of maybe wrap this up, man, overall your journey, it's been a fun ride. It's been real, but when people, friends, acquaintances ask you about your business, what do you tell them? How do you describe what you do, whether that's the fundamentals of your business or the lifestyle, or like how do you describe what you do for a living to your friends and colleagues and so on?
One of my favorite jokes, my favorite lines is, I have somewhere between 0 and unlimited days of vacation. But on the flip side, the way my business is right now, I don't have a project manager. I don't have salespeople. If I'm not here, if I'm not running the business doesn't run. And there's a burden to that of I can't just work remote for 3 weeks and go wherever I want. But there's also the incredibly rewarding lifestyle that, I work for myself. If I want to take a Friday off, I take a Friday off. I don't have to go check with anybody. Yeah, I mean, I tell people about flooring and it's fun to nerd out. And every once in a while, people will ask you about, wood floors and sanding, and you meet someone that used to do tile. But really what I've found is when I'm having those conversations with friends and family, it's less about hey, we install hardwood floors. It's more about the impact of what we do. And that maybe impact is maybe a silly word, but, I get to help remodel someone's home. We finished a bathroom project for a friend of mine today, and she's an engineer and admittedly a little neurotic, and she was kind of nervous throughout the whole thing. And we finished it today, and I stood there and I went, that looks really good. That looks really good. And she was like, yeah, that's awesome. And then I used our company cam app to make a before and after, and this was one of those old pink cast iron bathroom tubs,
Yeah, for sure.
Now it's a modern, beautiful, and I put those next to each other and I went, that's pretty good. I get to show off some of the beautiful work and I remember thinking early on, I don't do that work. It's my guys doing that work, but really it's us as a team doing that work. It's my business working with good people to make beautiful things happen in homes. And I get, blown away every time when you finish the job and it just comes together. In the tile world, I always think of it as people are kind of going, this doesn't look right before you grout, right? All the tiles up,
right?
And you're like, this doesn't look how I thought of it. And then as little as filling in the grout lines, it just unifies the whole thing. And all of a sudden it's a transformation. And I think that's kind of some of the most fun that we get to do is transform someone's home into something that they were excited about.
Yeah, I talk about it a lot with people, in the corporate world, whether it's beverage sales or what I do or whatever. I enjoy awarding franchises to people, but there's something about creating a tangible result that for us takes place in 3 to 5 days. And you walk in on day one and nerves are high and you start ripping things out. And you go in on Friday, and while you could write your name in the dust, the customer's like, holy cow, this is sweet. And you're like, dude, your house is killer.
Yeah.
And then I always laugh because it's like, yeah, we're gonna do your main floor. And I promise you're gonna look at your stairs and go, wow, those are outdated. Because the moment we start doing a little bit, it just, it unravels and you want to keep doing more. And it's, budgets allowing, people keep adding more work to it.
Call me back for the next room. I said that to the guy today. We did their stairs and their kitchen, and it kind of left the living room. And I said, hey, and the wife went out of town with the kids while he held down the fort. So I said, once your wife sees it, you'll be calling me back soon enough.
Right. And let me give you a quote so you know what you're saving for.
Yeah.
So I know we've talked about kind of the stress management, the emotional education and hand holding we do. And so whatever way you want to answer this question, who would you say, or what would you say is key to being successful inside this business? Or who would you turn away and say, you should look elsewhere at a different business? Whether it's, being I'll give you an example, a hardcore A-type personality, a perfectionist, man, we are not perfect. this is not going to be your jam, right? Like we make mistakes, we solve things. So who would you say really fits, and what are their attributes, or maybe yours, that help make successful days successful? And what's the other side of that coin that it's like, nah, this isn't right for you?
Yeah, I mean, there is no such thing as perfection. There doesn't exist. Perfection is a perception. We follow the industry laws, the industry rules. And there's probably some things I had to learn about myself to get better at this, that I am a type A person, but had to learn when to let go. I think you have to be able to roll with the punches. And I mean, with any business that you own, that you operate, the buck stops with you. There is nobody to blame. There is no one, the crew, but the crew who I hired. And if that's not a good crew, I don't bring them back next time, but I still need a crew to repair what was done wrong. And so, the buck stops with me, and it's a level of responsibility where you cannot say, well, but, and that's important. And I think the learning about me is I like to be very structured and organized. And that's part of what I love about having the customer service team in my calendar. And it's like, I wake up in the morning and I know what I'm doing, but that can change, as we've spoken about, at the drop of a hat. And you need to be able to have the flexibility to bend and to change your day and to go, okay, I'm going to be a little late. I'm going to call my customer and say, hey, I know we have an appointment with an arrival window from 1 to 2. I'm running late today. I'm going to be there at 2:30. Is that okay with you? And if they say, no, that doesn't work, and I say, okay, let's get you scheduled on another day. I'm sorry, this is what came up. And, that kind of honesty and that flexibility. And if you're going to get, unfortunately, I think if you get too bogged down in the minutia, in the minor details, you're going to spend forever getting, stuck in that. And you have to be able to look at a big picture and, again, roll with the punches. I'm trying to think, also that it's resilience, it's nothing. Rome wasn't built in a day, and Footprints wasn't built in a year, and my business wasn't built in a year, and my business is not done being built. Someone said to me, you've spent 5 years grinding. Eventually the payoff is there. Don't get out before the payoff is there. And, right. That's also part of it, is understanding you're not going to make $1 million in your first year. You might never make $1 million in revenue, but the better you get, the longer you stick with it, the more you can last. And I think there's been a lot of times where I've said, oh shoot, maybe I got to get out, but you nose to the grindstone and you're resilient and you stick with it. And, again, there's no instant success, and that's true in any business, even if I'm following someone else's model.
Yeah. I've helped award a lot of franchises in various models, and I'm always like, man, I'm rooting for you to be the top producer, but history shows me, like, you just get up, you grind. You were a professional beverage sales marketing guy, and you woke up one day as a brand new flooring guy, and it's like, yep, start doing the new guy stuff, right? Start doing all the grunt stuff and just grow from there. So as you look at your business, as you look at your successes, your struggles, your whatever, and knowing everything you know now, think about the Lee that met the team at approval day and was just about to sign his franchise agreement. What would you tell yourself to be aware of as you were preparing to sign for the franchise agreement?
Ooh, that's a tough one, because it's to take the step back and look at it, and every day is something different, but to be able to step back and say, what should you have known? I didn't know I was gonna fall in love with my cousin's best friend who lived in a different city and have to relocate my business. That's an interesting one.
That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I feel like somewhat of an expert on government regulations now. Just to be prepared, we can kind of joke, the best and the worst part are customers, right? Yeah. To be prepared, I'll tell you this. In my shadow week, there's a franchisee that's no longer part of the business, outside of Boston. and Zach Nicholson. And I went and shadowed him for a few days. And I said, like, I'm scared of X, I'm scared of Y. And he goes, think of it this way. Our business model says that you charge double what the crew makes and you pay crew half. So you could do the job twice before you lose money. And I kind of went, oh, all right, that makes sense. I'm not going to lose my shirt on the first mistake, and we all learn expensive lessons, but that's what it is. So I think it's just I don't know if I've really answered the question, because that's such a galaxy brain thought, is to just the pleasures of business ownership are better than you think, and the pitfalls are worse than you think. The highs are higher and the lows are lower.
Yeah. Your spectrum of like joy and pain are noticeably bigger as a business owner, but joy's great. Pain's a little more painful because the buck stops with you, but yeah, I'm sure you wouldn't have it any other way, right?
Absolutely not. I mean, that's why I'm here. And you talk about, I have not gotten to the point where I'm a top performer, and I'm okay with that, because I know that I'm getting better, and I know that I have value in other things, and I know that I'm a part of a franchise system that values me, not just because of the dollars I put up every month, but because I'm a contributor in other facets. And I've always wanted to be the person that does more than my job description. And sometimes in corporate world, they would tell you to get back in your box. And I get the chance to do everything I want to do and more or less on a weekly and daily basis. I've started to do more commercial bids because we have that new lead source. You know what I was working on before I talked to you? A Taco Bell.
Oh, really?
Not because I think there's much of a chance I'm going to win that bid, but because I got a bid invitation for a Taco Bell. And again, there's, based on how our business is structured versus how commercial bidding is structured, there's little chance I'm going to win it, but I'm at least enjoying it and learning and reading plans and doing markups and going to suppliers. And okay, I'll get to say one day, even if I don't win it, I put in a bid for a Taco Bell. Yeah. This is Taco Bell Cantina, full bar and everything.
Hot damn. What do you know about bars, Lee? Yeah, you struck a chord. You just said something near and dear to me related to something I underestimated. And you said you have many values outside of this, or you're valuable at something like that. And one of the things that has been a big learning lesson for me and my team is, while we take great pride in footprints, we take great pride in our customers and standards and beautiful jobs. Things happen and they don't define us. But in the beginning, especially when it's a new situation, whether you're brand new or 5 years in, but it's a new situation to you, you can't help but take it a little personal, and you have to remind yourself, wait a second, like, I'm a good father, I'm a great husband, I'm a great friend that's loyal to my buddies, a heck of a good time mountain biking with my, it's like, I can't let the name on my shirt define me. Like, so I made a flooring mistake. Yeah. What should I have known better? Maybe, I don't know, but it's not going to define who I am. And that's hard, right? Business ownership, especially for us that take great pride and do well at it. Like, we take things to heart, and sometimes separating that just takes time to figure out how to do that.
For sure. And that is probably that value is what I always missed on the corporate world. And I think what I get most out of this is, again, having something other than the numbers on the piece of paper tell you that you're good, And I would say, when I worked for Anheuser-Busch, they would propose beginning of the year, they go, here's all your goals. Do you accept them? And I'd go, well, you want me to grow Bud Light for the first time in 20 quarters or whatever the number is. I don't know, like, where do you think that's going to happen? And they would go, what do you mean? You're not fully invested? You don't believe in yourself? You're not gung-ho? You're not all in on achieving the goals? And I go, no, I'm all in. I just don't think they're realistic, but okay. Yeah, I accept these goals. I'm going to do it. And then December comes and they go, Lee, you're not growing Bud Light. What's wrong with you? You're a terrible person. And I'm like, well, I told you that this was going to happen. Like, what do you, and now the only person that gets mad at me is me, but it's more than just data on a piece of paper. It's, as you said, it's who I am, and it's what I represent, and it's what I bring to the table as a person, not as a foot soldier.
Well, I think the differentiation there is Bud Light being the product versus in your business, Lee is the product. You're a good guy. You answer the phone, you show up on time, you do what you say you're going to do. You don't run from mistakes. You might even say, hey, I don't have a solution, but I just want to let you know I'm still working on it. Like, I'm still here. I don't have it. I don't know. My team will, but they're off for the night or whatever, right? It's like your product now is you. So yeah, that's a great perspective you have. And unfortunately you've had some pre-programming that I didn't have, where a company kind of beat you up on that and tried to identify you as you're not all in. And so, yeah, for us, it was a learning lesson, or it has been a learning lesson to say, no, that's not us. Like, shit happens, whatever. Like, let's figure it out. We're still pretty good guys, So,
yeah.
And it's, I think it's a few of those customers that after the problem or the conflict, they look at you and they go, I really appreciate you sticking through this. And you go, thank you.
That's like the end of the day. As we talk about the final project, we talk about the smile on the customer's face, but also the extra level of appreciation for doing, for doing something that maybe, I would joke like no good deed goes unpunished. Every time I try to do something easy and nice, it goes sideways. But at the end of the day, that thank you matters.
Yeah. Well, I'll take a moment to say thank you for your time. And I'm sure a lot of people watching this will be thankful to hear and see what your journeys look like. So appreciate everything you do, Lee. Thank you for your time here. All right.